Hello, everybody, and welcome to Hot Takes, the show where myself and Jerm make arguably bad takes and get punished for them. Thanks for stopping by. Jerm, how's it going?
Going good, man. I don't know. I mean, it just depends who you ask. Do we give the? I get so many comments of that's a great take. That's the worst take I've ever heard in my life. How could you even say something like that? You can never make everybody happy, but we're gonna try again this week.
We're always trying, that's for sure. And to add on to that, I know that people have been asking. We will start adding sections into the show. It's tough, but I guess there are just some takes that you guys want to hear. I get it. Not all these takes are crazy. We're not, always given anything mind-blowing on these teams. But this week, we're going to have some interesting takes. I have a feeling that there are going to be more than one hot take. Or there's going to be, I should say, more than one hot take from each of us, but only one that will count. To catch you guys up real quick, by the way, I will have a picture of myself later on this week. I was just informed by Jerm that I have lost. I hate you all, and I'm so sad now. I was on my winning streak, man. I had a nice winning streak there, and then you came out with a good take, but definitely not one that was, I felt like, as hot as mine. So I was big sad. I knew I was losing that one.
Yeah, you're gonna have to. I mean, hey, you gotta get out on the campaign trail and everything too. Start getting people rallying behind you and whole nine.
Yeah. No, I gotta get a following. So if you guys like my takes, give me some love, man. I'm ready for it. I gotta get it. Maybe I just gotta take an outlandish take, and hope.
I think you gotta stay away from the small teams. It's a FlyQuest.
It is
and then
true.
Immortals, and
I
then,
know.
That's not what we're looking for. That's when people are asking for the timestamps. It's so they can skip over the Dignitas section. It's not so they can find it. They're not like, hey, what time do you guys talk about Immortals?
Hey, man. My take of Kenvi still getting this team all the way to LCS finals is still alive currently. But
hanging on to the playoff life.
Barely. And that's, here's the thing. I think we're going to break this up into sections this week because there are a couple different races that are going on. I think that should be kind of our focus for this week. And we'll start at the bottom. It's a 4-way race for 2 spots. You could technically throw in FlyQuest for 5. They have a relatively easy week coming up. I wouldn't say it's super easy, but they do get Immortals and TSM at the end of the week. So we're going to really figure out if FlyQuest are the real deal because they're going to play 100 Thieves. If they can pull off a win in that one, they're pretty much guaranteed a top spot. They'd have to lose to TSM, and TSM would have to go 3-0. That would be the only way the FlyQuest could still lose that 6th spot. But there's a ton of scenarios. I was trying to write a piece on it. Dude, I spent like 2.5 hours. I just couldn't. There's so many scenarios still. I think I'm going to hold off until maybe like Sunday's games and then have a piece out for all the teams for that because, bro, I mean, it is nuts. Like, it's really close. And even if it was just a battle for like the 6th spot, there would still be technically like 4 teams in it. So I don't know. I'm intrigued. Dignitas winning threw a huge wrench into everything, in my opinion. Not that I think they can make it, but I mean, hell, if all the other teams lose and they go 2-0, then or 2-1, then they're in playoffs still. So let's start there with Dig.
These bottom tier teams always end up in a weird spot because it's like, not only, if they win, do they like move up the standings, maybe they can play themselves into something. It's also like when you're looking at the other teams that are all competing for these spots, you see a Dignitas and you're like, okay, that's a free win. And then they start knocking other people out. Not only are they moving up, they're moving people down. They're, messing with things in that way too. So, you really get it from both sides, which is kind of interesting. Cause you start looking at, they have an easy schedule, but it's like, okay, what if Dignitas wins a game? Like, then what? I don't know. It's just there's still so many games left to be played. Yes, it is 1 week, but relative to the whole schedule, 3 games is like that's a decent chunk.
Yeah, and I don't think that people really understand that. I think that's been happening a lot actually. Like 3 games it's significant. I think it's actually what makes Super Week one of the best parts about the LECS and the LEC. I still wish we played more games, and I still think best of threes would be way better. And I think this is kind of a reason to prove why. But this week is crazy because, I mean, all it takes is one bad week from a team and one like crazy run from a team, and next thing you know, they're out of playoffs and another team's in. Like, it's really unlikely, I believe, but there's still a world where FlyQuest doesn't make playoffs, and that's crazy. I mean, that's nuts. They're certainly not locked in right now, and I mean, I'm kind of shocked, to be honest. And looking at Dignitas, like it's crazy that they even have a chance. Like it's just strange.
Yeah. The format is definitely interesting. Having the 8 teams, it does make it crazy, but it's also kind of weird to me that like you're talking about how few games they play and stuff, and how fast the split goes by. Like, dude, we're almost done with 2022. Like, that's crazy. Like, not only does it seem like the whole 2022 year like just started, but especially the summer split feels like it just started, and now we're 1 week away from the season being done for a couple of these teams, and like a week or two away from it being done. Like, it seems like it comes in super quick and then it just like ends so abruptly, and then you're down till like January. It's August, and you might be done till January. It's weird. It's weird.
Yeah, I really do wish that League, and I get why they can't, because the game has to go on to, you know, the preseason patch and stuff, and I think that's why they wait so long. But I guess this is, you know, we'll explore this topic a little bit, because I think it's a great point. Like, I really liked last year's setup. Actually, I think the records carrying over was really good, and I also think playing the 27 games was great. I think we got to see a better view of who the teams actually were, because all it takes is one. Like, I mean, I'm serious. Like, you know, freaking TSM could win all 3 of their games this weekend and be 8-10, and then everybody's sitting there like, oh, like, I mean, I personally would look like a huge moron. First off, I mean, I had the hot take weeks ago of like, this team's pretty bad, and solo isn't going to help them that much. Clearly, I'm wrong on that one already. But like, I mean, there's a world where, I mean, TSM aren't playing like, you know, the world beater teams. They've already played Under Thieves. They've already played Evil Geniuses. They've already played Team Liquid. Like, they could win. They play CLG, FlyQuest, and Cloud9, all beatable teams. Next thing you know, they're 8-10, and you're sitting there and you're like, wow, was this team actually bad, or did they just not? Did it take them too long to figure it out? Like, did the roster moves matter? Like, and then you also have a trade deadline that's only 2 weeks ahead of time. You only get 5 games afterwards. And it's like,
which is just not enough.
It's not enough. No, it's not. And, you know, I respect that these players need time off from the game, but, I don't know. I'd rather see the lock-in, like, count towards something, honestly. I'd rather, like, I would rather have more games in January and more games into September, and then do, you know, a smaller playoffs in October, early October, and then head straight to Worlds. You know, like, I don't know. There are ways that I think they could extend the season, more games. You know, I compare it a lot to traditional sports. People hate when I do it. I don't care. Like, I'm sorry. It's just the world I come from. But if baseball players are out there playing 162 games plus like 20-something spring games, I think we can play more than 36 games. I mean, the LCK and the LPL, I think, I don't remember if the LPL, but I know the LCK plays best of threes. They play like
LPL does too.
The LPL does too. Okay, yeah, I couldn't remember, but like, I mean, here I'll go check right now the amount of games that they play per season. Let's see.
That's crazy. And while you're looking that up, as far as the sports comparison too, it's like you're thinking about a baseball team or a basketball team or football team or whatever. You're talking about the travel and everything with that as well. These guys live in LA. They freaking got to drive half an hour to the studio, maybe less, you know, whatever, and just show up and play. And yeah, their schedule is crazy, and during the week it's long days, whatever. You play the best of one. It literally takes 1 hour. Like, your Saturday is 1 hour, your Sunday is 1 hour. Obviously there's prep and stuff that goes into it, but it's not an 8-hour day, you know, a game day or something like that. Yeah, it's weird.
And you have long breaks, and I think the problem is everybody's like, well, what about burnout? And I'm like, these players have to learn to stop playing the game. Like, Wonder, I know, got flamed a lot for it, but I think he actually had a really good mindset of when he doesn't have to, he doesn't play the game anymore. He's good enough to where he doesn't have to. And yeah, like during season, sure, he should be practicing plenty. no doubt. But when you have off time, use that off time. Like do
That's what
other
it's for.
stuff.
Like that's why it's
you're
there.
making a salary. You don't have to stream. Streaming's fun, but you're making a salary. Stream
And
when
a
you
good
retire.
salary. It's not, we're not in like a
minimum
bad
salary
time
is
for
like
the economics.
$100,000. I think you're doing okay. And just so you guys know, T1 played 43 games. Most of these teams played 42. I don't know why T1 played 43. Oh yeah, because actually I don't know why. I'd have to look, but it's 43, somewhere between 43 and 42 games in one split.
Yeah.
And the LCS doesn't even do that in two splits combined.
Right, and if you don't make playoffs, you will play less than that in a whole year, in a calendar year.
Every player also talks about the fact that on stage games are where you get more practice, you get more experience, because scrims they can be kind of useless. Teams may call like a game after 15 minutes if they don't get the early game that they were wanting to, or
how League of Legends is so terribly set up as a practice environment or practice tool or whatever. It's so hard to replicate, so hard to drill or like do anything meaningful with. It's like, you would be much better off playing games that matter than having more days of practice.
And it's like the more games you have, the more time you have to figure things out. Like I personally am of the belief too that the LCS broadcasts and stuff, like some people believe that you'd water it down, but I think if you had games going throughout the week, people would watch it. I mean, I know the weekend is more available, but like people also are more likely to watch during the week because they want to go out and do stuff on the weekends. So it's like, I really do. Somebody at TGH actually wrote, Connor Atlas, like he wrote a piece about how the LCS is very attached to certain times in certain games. Like every game, the first or the third game of the week or something like that is always like the most important game, and then the last two just don't even matter, right? And it's like, if that's the case, then just move them. Or I personally think they should play Thursday through Sunday, and each team should play 2 best of 3s, and they just maybe they'll play Thursday Friday, maybe they'll play Thursday Sunday. Like they kind of had that, and they were like, well, broadcasters got tired and all this stuff, and I'm like, I get it, then hire more broadcasters, right? Like every team in professional sports and stuff has their own broadcasting crew and everything. Right. Like we can get to that
is what
point
is
eventually.
So weird. That's what's so weird about the LCS right now is like the LCS, they're trying to get every fan, or like the average LCS fan, most LCS fans or whatever, to watch every single game. And like in traditional sports, that's not even possible. You have your team, you kind of vaguely follow the other teams or whatever, but yeah, there's multiple games going on at once. There's games going on all the time. Like the NFL tries to get games on as many days as they possibly can. So does every other sports. Obviously, football is maybe a little bit more limited in what they even can physically do, but the other sports, they're trying to just throw stuff at you 24/7, and the LCS is like, hey, we're gonna pace it nice and easy for you, so you one LCS fan, you can watch all 10 games. And it's like, the average LCS fan is like, yeah, I'm not gonna watch Dignitas versus Immortals. I would rather my favorite team play 4 games this week, even if it overlapped with some other teams or whatever. Like it's I don't know, it's so different, and I feel like people don't question it ever. It's just like, oh yeah, this is what we've been doing for the last 10 years, so let's keep doing it. I don't know.
And it's just like, I mean, I'm looking at the LCK schedule. I mean, they play 2 best of 3s. You don't always have to play the third game, which is fine, whatever. But they play them 5 days a week, and every team, I'm pretty sure every team here plays 2 games.
Yeah. They'll be like, there's like games on Tuesday and
there's games,
Thursday. And
Yep. Wednesday, right? This last week it was Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Like, and people tune in from North America, even in Europe.
Yeah, it's not like they're doing, but people tune in at like 4 a.m. in North America to watch these games. It's like, if you have the product, people will watch it. You don't need, I mean, obviously, you have competing interests, and you can maybe min-max a little bit, but like the big chunk of whatever you're going for is going to attract the people. People are going to find it. If they want it, they're going to seek it out. It's like you're trying to spoon feed these people something that they just don't want, rather than making something that they do want, or more of the things they do want.
Well, and if you think like, and I've always wondered this, and I don't know why it's not talked about more, but everybody's like, well, the West sucks. They're not as good as the East. Well, have we ever discussed the fact that it's because they're playing quadruple the games that matter.
Yeah. Yeah, and I mean, people. I mean,
At
I
least
definitely do
triple, I
see
guess
that
I should
argument
say.
out there. Yeah, I see that argument out there because that's what a lot of people have said. Like, hey, we want best of threes, we want best of twos because it's more interesting and more fun to watch. But also, we need to get the games up. And Riot tried it the one time, they didn't like it or whatever. But I mean, I definitely see some of that. But also, people are just so exhausted of like having to bring that point up because it's been beaten into the ground so much. And Riot is coming out and saying that it's never going to happen or whatever. I know you saw the tweet of the LEC head of esports or whatever that was like, oh, we're going to expand the league when we add best of threes or whatever. Like, just saying that best of threes is like such a joke possibility to them, which is weird.
I don't know. I know that I am obviously in the minority, I guess, because I do. I mean, this is part of my life. I talk a lot about League of Legends. I watch a lot of games. But, I mean, at some point, in my opinion, they gotta do something different. And again, I really liked last year's. I think having the extra games, I think the records carrying over, it made it made last summer every game felt like it mattered. And I know a lot of people are like, well, what do you mean? Look at the run that FlyQuest went on. Look at what Golden Guardians did. Like, they recovered from a bad split and they still played really well, and I can't remember exactly who made playoffs, but the idea was there, it worked, and I really believe that would be better for the LCS, and it would at least allow me to stomach how things are going a little bit more, and it would make the summer a lot more interesting too, because it just feels like a total restart, and I just don't like that.
Right. That's the big thing. So I actually hadn't really heard of this argument before, but it opened my eyes so much. I really think this is what I believe too, that okay, so if you ask the average person, spring split sucks, it doesn't mean anything, especially without the records carrying over. Spring split means nothing.
Literally
Summer split's the big one, summer split's the exciting one or whatever. But also from everything we do, we know that there is summer, not a great time for, like you said, people want to do stuff in summer, the weekends, all that stuff. So the LCS and all of LOL esports schedule right now, the split that matters, the split that you should care about or whatever, it's halfway through the year when we're maybe already exhausted a little bit. It's in the summer when people aren't as available. And this is coming after Spring Split, where Spring Split is where you're getting the first look at new rosters. It's been a long offseason. People are excited. And that's when you throw the split that doesn't matter in our face. And then in the summer, after we've already seen all the new teams and rosters and faces and we have other stuff going on in life, that's when you give us a split that does matter. There's just so many weird things about how the schedule's set up, the timing, all of it. Because, so many people are like, hey, get rid of Spring Split or make Spring Split matter or whatever. But it's why is summer split in summer? Why is it the one that matters? And does it have something to do with why viewership for both the LEC and LCS hasn't been doing well in summer, even though it's supposed to be the better split or the more meaningful split or whatever?
I mean, can you imagine if League of Legends went to the school cycle to a certain degree, at least the American school cycle, where it was start in the fall, take a little break over the winter while they're patching things up, and then head in, second week of January, play all the way until May, and then you have Worlds then. Or even, honestly, why? Okay, I can't believe I haven't thought of this before. Just make MSI during the downtime in December. You can't play the game anyways because it's getting preseason, so you just keep them on that patch, and then nobody cares. And it's not that big of a deal.
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah,
man.
There's
that would be so
many...
good.
Yeah, it's crazy with how
I'm sure
successful League of Legends has been, despite so many of these optimizations and stuff that are such no-brainers in other media and competition and stuff. It seems like a lot of the success is in spite of a lot of the things that are going on, and so much of it hasn't changed in the last 10 years. How have these things not changed or been experimented with or whatever? So yeah, I don't know. There's definitely a lot of different things that you could do, a lot of different ideas, and I wish they tried some more stuff, because what are the chances that 10 years ago you picked the exact perfect format and that's why we have what we have today? It's probably not very likely.
Nah, and I know the logistics, by the way, of what I even just suggested would be very hard, because then you'd have to literally make Spring Split. I don't know what that would be exactly. What would happen, right? If you were to move Worlds to May, what would that really look like? And I would also get the argument of do you really want to clash with the NFL schedule? Because regardless of what people say, a lot of people in the league community do watch things like the NFL. So Not everybody, obviously, but there's a good majority. So yeah, trying to have games on Sundays would be pretty tough. So I'm sure there are plenty of reasons. I'm sure they have plenty of people who are studying it. But yeah, I mean, I would like for them to try to help, especially North American fans, do something different. And if it is going to be that North America is going to be for the diehard fans, which is seemingly the argument to a lot of people, then make it for the diehard fans. Make it so that they're playing best of threes. The diehard fans want best of threes. I'm telling you right now. Most people I talk to.
And games during the week and everything.
Yeah.
And yeah, that's the thing. It's like, if you have these whales out there that will consume all this stuff, like, hey, feed them, give them the stuff. It's like, yeah, clearly the casual fan base is, only interested in the biggest games, the playoffs, worlds, that stuff. Like, I find it hard to believe that you're ever going to get very much of a casual audience for a Dignitas Immortals Week 7 summer split game. Like, it's just so uninteresting, especially when you have the organizations that care as little as they do. Maybe we get to that point eventually where every game is huge and every team has a significant fan base that's going to tune in and stuff, but we're not there right now.
It takes time. It takes time to build. It's going to be the second generation of fans that will really, I think, be the decider on how League of Legends does. But that was a great, I think, conversation to have. Unfortunately, and I do truly mean unfortunately, because I think you and I could probably go on this for a while, and I think there's a lot more points that could be made. But we do have to talk about what most people care about, and that's the LCS and its actuality. Let's just do what we normally do. Let's start with Dig. I don't like this team. I don't dislike them as people, but I don't like the way this team is built. I really feel for Biofrost, and I really honestly kind of feel for Blue. Blue has actually quietly been a pretty solid player this entire time, with a pretty bad team around him and clearly a jungler who had no interest in him whatsoever. It was pretty clear River was super hyped to go to Golden Guardians, and it's kind of funny that he might finish below them. But this team's just, I'm not interested. Like you said, I don't care about like Hoon or Spawn right now. Like, I think it's a cool story. If they were actually able to, come together and figure it out, great. But yeah, they're there.
Yeah, we're getting towards the end of the year. We've seen it play out week after week. I think we're getting to the point where we're ready for them to be eliminated or to get knocked out in the first round of the playoffs or whatever. Yeah, kind of just overall boring. Blue, I do kind of, maybe feel sorry for him because he's outperformed, but like he has a starting job in a major region, which is more than a lot of people expected. So it's like maybe good for him that he's even here, and now maybe he can use this opportunity to get something else in the future. Who knows? Because he could have just been rotten in the ERLs or whatever this split as well, which maybe you can say, oh well, he would have done really well in the ERLs. Well, maybe he wouldn't have. It's like not everything doesn't necessarily work out like that. So yeah, we'll see. And then the question just becomes, is Dignitas going to be here next year? Are they not? What's going to happen to their players if they are here, if they aren't here? Are they planning an off season? Are they not planning an off season? And yeah, what their plan is for the future, or what somebody else's plan is for the future. I mean, I think that's like a million times more interesting than their next 3 games.
Yeah, I mean, the only way their next 3 games would be interesting to me is if I actually felt like they had a chance in winning more than one of them, and even then, that would still be pretty hard for me to honestly care about. So, I mean, here's the deal. Like, good for them. They did get a win this weekend. I think that's awesome for those players. I ran some numbers. I had a spreadsheet that I made. They have a 2-ish% chance to make playoffs right now. It's pretty low. And I think like literally one win from Golden Guardians or Immortals takes them down to like 1 or 0.5%. So we'll move on. Immortals. What? I don't understand this team. You go out.
Yeah, it's weird.
You lose to Dig. You beat Golden Guardians. I know both teams aren't very good, but this team just, they don't seem to have an identity. The only thing I can say that's been good about this team to me is Kenvi and Revenge look like building block pieces to me. I'm not saying they're great, but most players take time to develop. I know Revenge has been here for a bit, but I don't think he was ready at all when he initially came up. He has
Yeah.
looked much better. Sure, he has those '06 Yone games, but that's kind of because he's trying to make something happen when the rest of his team isn't. I was going through the numbers today. Power of Evil is arguably the worst mid laner in the LCS right now, at least statistically. Lost isn't doing too much better. Ignar is probably the worst support in the LCS right now. This team it's unfortunate because I think on paper this team actually probably should have been better, but they're heading into what is ultimately going to be a pretty tough weekend of C9, FlyQuest, and CLG. Again, not playing the top tier teams, but that middle tier that is absolutely fighting for their position in the playoffs. And I feel like Immortals, like, they had an opportunity. They could have 2-0'd this weekend and been in a premier spot for the playoffs, and now they're not. And I mean, they're going to look back on that Dignitas game and they're going to be banging their heads against the wall over that one. There's just no reason why anybody should lose to that team.
Yeah. No, and I get what you're saying, but like when you say that, it just makes me laugh because it's like, I see them. They're at home. They're watching the first round of the playoffs, and they see whoever, Golden Guardians get 3-0 in the first round of the playoffs, and they're like, that should have been us. That could have been, like that type of thing of like, if we just would have beat Dignitas, we could have been.
We could have been the team that got an
now.
extra week and then got swept by whoever we played. Yeah, I get it.
Yeah. So yeah, it's
but
funny.
I
get what you're saying,
right? Like I think.
Oh yeah.
For me,
and just playing more, you don't want your season to be over. And
well, that too. But I will say this: I think the only argument that I have at least mentally been able to grasp with for 7th and 8th is yes, these teams are going to get probably stomped, probably pub stomped even by whoever comes down there. But let's say a team is making a run. They've really figured it out. They're on a good patch for themselves. That can make things interesting. Or right, like when Golden Guardians took down TSM that one year, right? Like, lower bracket runs are fun, but like, oh no, they weren't 7th though. They were like 6th. Okay.
Yeah, I think they were 6th.
Yeah, they were like 6th. But regardless, like,
yeah,
I think it gives younger players, and this is why I'm such a big proponent for younger, inexperienced players to just be put on teams that aren't performing well. Like, if you don't think you're going to win, get players experience and see who they really are. The LCS isn't kind of beholden to any contracts. They kind of just let people go whenever the hell they want to because they don't give guaranteed money within these contracts. So by doing that, I think any team that really does not feel like they can finish at least top 6, and arguably, at least in my opinion, top 3. I'm not saying every team should be, every team that's not top team should just be, full of young players. But like the way you build a dynasty, the way that you build a team that can compete year in and year out is by getting these younger players experience and letting them play out. I think the LEC has been a prime example for this. Almost every year, most of these teams have one or two young, inexperienced players until they kind of figure out their roster. I think Mad Lions would be the perfect example of this, where they brought in a bunch of young guys with kind of a couple old guys mixed in here and there. They got a lot of experience, and then the next thing you know, they've built now a team that I would argue is still one of the best in the LEC, even after their atrocious O2 weekend. So I want to see more teams doing this, and I think the only good part about this is they get to see what a best of 3 is like against, or a best of 5, mostly best of 3 for most teams, but a best of 5 against these bigger teams. And like, imagine like if Immortals, whoever they play against, ends up pulling out just even one win. What does that do for Kenvy's mentality heading into the next year? Revenge's mentality heading into next year? I can pretty much guarantee you that if Immortals have any hope of actually being good next year, they're not going to probably keep Power of Evil, Lost, or Ignar. So that's my only argument for it, is at least it gives them some games to play, and it kind of also gives the better teams a little bit of a warm-up game before they head into some pretty serious ones. So I don't love that 8 teams make it. I think it kind of waters down the point of making playoffs, but at the same time, there are benefits to it for the lower tier teams to try to make them more competitive in the future.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, there is definitely some benefits. You get to go through the whole, even just going through the process of like preparing for a best of five, preparing for a playoff match, all that stuff. I don't want to overstate it because I think it is like minimal benefit. If you get the 3 extra games or not, I don't think I don't think we have seen a player that's like, oh, he got 3-0'd in 2015 and like that defined his whole career. It's like nothing like that. But I think you can get these small bonuses and stuff. And it's just I'm pretty indifferent about the whole thing. Like if you get the 8 seed, cool. If you don't, cool. If 6 teams made the playoffs, I wouldn't care about the 7 or 8 seed, any more or less than I do right now. So it just kind of is what it is. If anything, I think Lost actually had an okay weekend.
He did.
Revenge, he's been good, and like you said, he has these random inty games and stuff, and I think he's kind of fighting for his LCS life because I think he's definitely in like the bottom half of the top laners, and he's fine, but there's some good guys coming up. Like I know I keep talking about Tenacity, and
Bradley.
then, when the time comes, Sniper is going to be an option for a lot of these teams as well, and it's like, if you're not top 5 or 6 right now, you're kind of fighting for your position each year. So like even if Revenge does have like some future, if he's starting to look better than he did or whatever, it's still like, how long do you ride Revenge versus maybe going after somebody else at some point? And that's a hard decision. Like maybe Revenge deserves more time, maybe he doesn't. It's hard to know when players are going to blossom or whatever.
Yeah. I mean, look at Dope.
But like, right. Yeah, you never know. Yeah.
That's fair. And I think we'll move on to Golden Guardians because I think that is arguably the most interesting team in terms of the way it's been built, the moves that they have made. Like, they're now a team of just straight up veterans when you think about it, right? Like old guard type people, and they're still struggling. I mean, River's a world's caliber player. At least used to be, not anymore. Licorice was a world's caliber player. Not really anymore. Olay, world's caliber player. Stixay, almost won MSI. Like, I don't get the decision with this team to make the changes that they made. And then now these players who have actually been okay, at least in certain times, you go in and you put in Leader after you just made a change to bring in River to help Ablaze Olive when he's actually still been pretty solid overall. He's not been amazing, but I don't get it with this team, and I honestly think that change may end up costing them playoffs because they had a weekend where, sure, they were probably going to lose to 100 Thieves, but dude, you win that Immortals game, you're in. You're in. Why would you make a change right now to go do that? I mean, it's so baffling to me. This team was 4-5 at one point, and you lose 4 games in a row. I know that feels bad, but dude, you put arguably your best player and you throw him down into academy, like, and he's even if he comes back, he's done with this team. There's no way that he can honestly look himself in the mirror and be like, yeah, this team values me. They just replaced me with Leader, for God's sakes. Like, come on, man. Like, Leader's fine, but did he make this team better over these 2 games? Definitely not. I don't think I cannot see a world, and you cannot give me an argument where, unless if Leader was going to pop off, that he made enough of a difference. And now, like, they're in trouble. I mean, they really are. They are not in a good position right now to make playoffs. And these 3 games, I can't remember exactly who they play, but it's not great. Yeah, they go up against Evil Geniuses, Team Liquid, and then Dignitas. Like, sure, they may get that win down there against Dignitas, but then they're going to be praying that everybody else is going 0-3, and that's no guarantee right now.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting because weirdly enough, like how many Golden Guardians YouTube videos have I ever watched in my life? Like I couldn't even have told you that they had a YouTube channel probably, but I was watching a Golden Guardians YouTube video the other day and they were talking about their changes and they pretty much said that it sounds to me and based on the looks of things, you can tell that they don't really care if they make playoffs or not. They kind of said that in the video that they were like, we are making these changes because going into this, they said, hey, it's been a rough year. We went on that big losing streak. This season's pretty much over for us. And that's what they were saying. And they were saying, we want to see what we have in all these players so we can make more complete decisions going into the offseason. They were like, hey, we want to know what we have in Leader. We want to know what we have in Prismal. And yeah, like you said, these moves don't make them better in the short term. Swapping out Prismal for Ole, however good or bad you think Ole is.
To be honest.
I mean, yeah, whatever. And then, but same thing with, the mid lane, whether you think a Blazov leader's better, people are going to be on both sides, who knows. But I would argue either way, throwing somebody in with no scrims or anything, even if they are maybe better, marginally better, a lot better. And yeah, it just seems like they don't care, which in a weird way, I kind of respect, because it's what we keep talking about, that especially what you're saying for a more veteran team, who gives a shit if you're a veteran team and you get to play one more best of 5 or not? You could argue that this is not the right decision, that this is the wrong way to go about things, that it's for sure an unpopular, unprecedented, we don't see teams doing this, but I thought it was it at least made me think when I'm watching this YouTube video, maybe I disagree, maybe it's weird, maybe I don't disagree, I don't even know, but it's at least making me think, is this going to be good? Is this going to work out? And then it's also making me think, okay, so now what the heck are you going to do in the offseason? Okay, you saw what Prismal and Leader and stuff look like. Yeah, is a Blazov coming back? Is Leader coming back? Right? I don't know. But it's interesting, I think.
But see, okay, so here's my only thing with that, because I do agree with you. I think that I didn't know that they had said that. So first off, my ignorance coming through right there. I should have watched that video, because I did see that video, but I didn't click on it. I was like, I don't really care what you're... I should have cared.
I watched it passively.
No, it's okay. Listen, I think it's good that you did, because I think those kinds of videos are good. And I wish that TSM had that mindset, because I personally have said that. You know this. It doesn't really matter. And I'm still not on that train of 7th or 8th really mattering in the long term. I'm glad that they're doing this, but when you say you're looking for something, right? You're trying to figure out what you have. Mm-hmm. In my opinion, how does Leader matter compared to a Blaze Olive, right? To me,
they're gonna find out.
but here's the thing: is it's if that's the plan, right? Does that mean that they believe a Blaze Olive is gone? I think that might be what the case is, right? I truly believe that must be what they're thinking right now. And I do think there are some teams in the LCS that would like to have a Blaze Olive in their mid lane.
Yeah, sure. And another part of the argument is, what are you really going to learn from 5 games? Is 5 games enough to dictate your offseason?
Yeah, and it's just and if that's their argument, then what the hell is Array doing down in the freaking Academy squad? Stixay, we know what Stixay is.
Stixay's coming back.
Dude, we know what he is. He was just a coach. If your argument is that, good. You did it for Prismal. But you also screwed him. He was arguably one of the better 80 carries in Academy. And then he had to move to support just to get playing time. And now you're trying to, judge him or whatever for what he's doing at the LCS level.
Yeah.
The mindset may be there, and they may be truly trying to figure out what they have, but how many of these pieces are you really thinking are going to be a part of your future, especially if you're not going to give somebody like Concept or Array a chance?
Yeah, and maybe the weirdest part of all of this is Ole and Pride Soccer didn't go down to Academy because
they're just
we've
chilling.
Already seen... Yeah. They've said, hey, we already saw Ole in Academy. We've seen enough of that. He doesn't need to go down and Smurf in Academy or whatever. So our assistant coach is going to be our Academy support? That's so weird. I don't know. There's a lot of weird stuff going on. Some of it I can appreciate. Some of it I can at least respect for the ballsiness or whatever. But some of it is definitely questionable.
The worst part about it is this team has been known, at least for me, as a team that has created great talent. If they would have just kept, that 100 Thieves team, basically, they were great. They were easily going to be one of the best teams. But it's this is an organization that I love because I think they take chances. But the problem, and I think Inero, by the way, is incredible. I have a ton of respect for him. So I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt on this one.
Yeah, I really like Nero too, and I do have a lot of high praise and respect for him as well, but I also wonder if he gets into situations like this of they might call it fancy play syndrome or whatever, where you're you're such a big brain coach and you've done so many things different your whole career, and it's gotten you to this point where you can't slow down, you can't stop, you can't like overcoach yourself or whatever. And he does some stuff sometimes where I wonder like that, like is he trying to have his hand too much and stuff or whatever. And I think it ends up in some situations like this. But he's definitely a guy who's outperformed the talent of his teams, over the course of his career. But that doesn't make him devoid of criticism either.
No, and I think this is a good place to be critical too, because listen, Golden Guardians, here's the deal. You got one guy 22 years or younger on your entire team, and you're trying to plan for the future right now. That's not to say that these guys couldn't do it, right? I'm starting to go a little bit away from the age factor that I had before, but there are certain positions where you have a very short time period, and if you're seriously telling me right now that you're making these moves because you're looking towards your future, and Array is still sitting there doing nothing, and you don't care about playoffs, and Stixay is still your starting AD carry, and it's not that Stixay's been bad, but like, if you're truly just giving up on it, then bring them all up. Bring up the younger, less experienced. I'm even going to just use the word instead of younger, less experienced players.
Right. I think that's the more important thing anyway.
Yeah, because like we've seen Leader played on good teams even, or well, supposed to be good Vitality teams even, and Misfits, right? Like he's had plenty of opportunities. What more do you need to see out of him? Array concept, like you haven't, even Pride Stalker, realistically, you haven't necessarily seen a lot compared to some of these other people. Like, I just think that this strategy, like, I understand that Golden Guardians are playing Moneyball, but like this team is just making some really weird choices, and I am not. I would rather them, if they really just don't have a lot of money and they really don't believe that they're going to be able to keep some of these players, then like, why is your academy team full of former coaches / whatever else you want it to be? Like, I mean, I love Acadian as a person. I think he's so nice, and he has done some good things. He's not a bad player, but like, you know what he is. You trade for River, then what the hell's the point of trading for River? Like, I just, it's going to be weird. This team is going to be very strange for a little while. I just...
Yeah, this offseason is going to be crazy for them. Yeah, what are they about to do?
Yeah, I mean, are they
what is on the table? I mean, to me, it seems like they're really interested in building around River. As like they talked about this a little bit in the video too, as like River being a guy that hopefully their idea is that River's a guy with his pedigree and career and stuff that people will want to come play with. So maybe getting him is like, oh, hey, now we have a guy who people respect. Now we're like potentially a good team. And I mean, that can be good. Over time, you can slowly kind of get pieces, but it's going to take time.
They said the same thing about Licorice. And, like, they should have one of the best, like, top jungle mid duos or trios in the LCS. Like, people don't respect the fact that Licorice and Ablaze Olive are consistently good laners, and they do relatively well in team fights. Their bot lanes that they have played with are just always either bad or just barely around average. Like, this bot lane has been kind of average. Problem is, the rest of the LCS is getting better, and they have also have...
That's what I was going to say, too. It's like, yeah, maybe a couple years ago, this would be like a serviceable bot lane or something, but like now, I mean, they're still in the bottom half, so...
Yeah, I just don't understand, like, what your plan... Like, if I was them, and again, I guess this must mean that Ablaze Olive is leaving, which is super sad for them, honestly. But, dude, I would truly just commit, like, Licorice, River, Ablaze Olive, and then go find some young or interesting, or even go pay for one really good AD carry. Next thing you know, like, you can pair him with whoever the hell you want to at support, and the team's actually still pretty decent. Like, I've always felt like this team was a bot lane away from being a good team, and now they're in a, and they seriously may, like, my hot take about them not making playoffs, like, it may actually happen now. And I mostly thought that was because of the bot lane and Pride Stalker. Then they went out and got River, and I was like, oh, I guess I'm gonna eat my words. Yeah. They gave that 2 games, and then they were making changes. Like, I'm glad these LCS teams are making changes to a certain degree during the season. They are trying to figure out what they have, but like, I don't know, man. We should probably just move on to TSM. TSM get a big win, an expected win, but just an absolute massacre of Dignitas. I mean, they also got massacred because I think they just did exactly what Evil Geniuses expected them to do. They were like, hey, we're going to try to play through solo. And it's like, or why? Like, do something different. If you do exactly what EG expects you to do, then you're going to lose to them. So, I don't know. I think solo has brought stability to the top lane. That's great. I was saying this on Talking TSM. I actually think Maple's been the worst player on the team in the last 4 games.
It's crazy how fast Maple's kind of fallen off, because at the beginning of the split, he looked insane. Like, it was a breath of fresh air. And he's just been so underwhelming. Like, I don't even notice him anymore most of the game. Like,
invisible.
What's a play that he's made? What's a thing that he's done or anything like that? Which I just think is weird. But also, I mean, solo kind of coming in and, like you say, adding stability. He's just kind of doing solo thing. I mean, this is just what solo does. He just comes into these teams.
Yep.
He's gonna win you games because he's not amazing, but he's better than a lot of the bad LCS players. He's somewhat consistent. He's had some inty games too, and he's not on the best team in the world. But I mean, this is just his thing. It's crazy. It doesn't make sense, but this is what he comes in and does. Yeah, I don't know. Well, TSM,
he's kind of aging like a fine wine, I mean, seriously, like, the man is almost 30 years old, and he's still playing really, really well. I'm personally impressed by just the fact that, like, it's just like, I don't know that I've ever seen a player in League of Legends be truly just plug and play. Like, truly, it's never really happened. Every time it's like, you gotta give him time to, get used to it. And I understand the top lane isn't the most
take time off, come in with a new team he's never played with
and
before.
He plays well, and then he helps him make playoffs. And it's like, it honestly makes me wonder: is there a chance that this TSM team actually potentially wins their first round now? Like, I'm trying not to be like, yes, I am wearing my TSM jersey today. I know that I hopium and copium for them a lot. But I think I've also been very critical about how bad that they've been. And I really didn't feel like it was worth going to playoffs with solo. But now I'm starting to realize that maybe I was wrong. Like, at least to a certain degree. Like, Instinct looks pretty good. Chime has looked pretty solid. Like, I think that TSM have actually a rising star bot lane. I know people aren't going to, like, maybe you think I'm crazy, but Instinct just turned 18. This kid has so much room for growth. And he's already doing way better than Tactical was doing. I looked at, like, the stats today. Instinct's actually, since he's been in the league, he's actually been a top 5 bot laner in the LCS statistically. He really, like, he said it in TSM Legends a couple weeks ago. He's like, without being rude, he basically straight up said that his supports on TSM Academy were garbage. He said this is the first good support that I've had. And you can see the difference when he has a good support. I mean, is he Danny levels? No. But, or at least not yet. But, like, has his ceiling increased and his floor increased? I would say yes. I mean, with that, plus Spica's been playing out of his mind. You have a stable top laner. All it takes right now for TSM to actually be maybe an average team-ish is for Maple to really just step up right now. And we're going to get a good look. I mean, this weekend, again, they play FlyQuest. They have the same schedule as Immortals. They play FlyQuest, CLG, and Cloud9. There's a world where they can win 2 of these 3 games. And if one of them's over FlyQuest and FlyQuest goes 0-3, they're playing in a tiebreaker game for the 6th place spot in double elimination.
And that sounds crazy, but it's kind of, going back to something you said earlier of, like, just with how few games are being played, that, winning a couple games changes everything. And I think that's, like, kind of good, but also kind of makes the whole thing kind of stupid, too, of, like, best of ones are so coin flippy as it is. So it's part of it is how many coin flips are you going to win. Part of it is, the patch and when you win your games and who you play and stuff. Just thinking even stuff like, some people got to play against Cloud9's Academy team for...
3
at least one of their 18 games. Yeah. So the schedule and the records and everything, we put so much weight in it, but at the end of the day, it probably shouldn't mean as much as it really does. So yeah, I don't know.
And TSM may be the beneficiary of it because it is really
somebody's gonna end up being, not as good as their record shows. Some people are going to end up being better than their record shows. That's just the nature of it.
Yeah, and it's just, I don't know. It's very crazy to me that this team is performing as well as it is, and I think TSM fans should be happy. I think if they are serious about competing long term, they find a way to re-sign Spica and they keep that bot lane. And I think if you do that, you got a chance. I'm not saying to keep Solo. I think he does have a limit to how much he can do and how much he can be figured out.
And that's what's weird. Yeah, he has a high floor and a low ceiling. You're getting this.
He is about as known of a player as you're going to get. But if you really just need a guy to be that weak side top laner, he is that. I mean, he's probably one of the best weak side top laners in the West. It's just that doesn't help you win a lot of games. That just helps you stabilize them. So
yeah, he got to Worlds and then you didn't really want to see him at Worlds.
Yes, exactly. So it's interesting. It's very interesting. We're gonna move on though. FlyQuest, dude. This team went from hero to zero real fast, and it's been really disappointing. I've come on this show and talked about how much I like this FlyQuest team. But losing to C9, Evil Geniuses, Team Liquid, and CLG, they're just the gatekeepers, it would seem, right?
Yeah, that's about as bad as it can get, especially with the timing of everything. And it's interesting because I thought that they were more legit and CLG was maybe more of a pretender, but then all of a sudden that's exactly flipped on its head. Mm-hmm. And this split more so than others has been weird because usually you get the mid-season update in between spring and summer, but this year we got the durability patch during summer split, so I also wonder how much that's affected teams. I know Jat on the JLXP came out and said, and a lot of people agreed with this when we're talking about this, that FlyQuest, Tukoi and Jose Diodo have been so good, but they're so reliant on Tukoi and Jose Diodo that as the season's gone on, Jat feels like teams have started a game plan for that more, and they've been hey, Philip, beat us. Hey, Johnson, beat us. That type of thing, where it's not that Tukoi and Jose Diodo are playing worse or that maybe FlyQuest is worse or anything like that, but I think it's interesting how at the beginning of the split, new rosters, teams, you're kind of working on your own things, trying to find your own identity. And then by the end of the split, you figured out your own thing and you start to play against the teams you're playing against a little bit more, especially in the second round robin. And I think FlyQuest is maybe feeling that a little bit, where maybe they were performing better than their parts before, but now they're probably more in line with how talented this team actually is, which, look at the players. It's not like it's an insane roster or anything.
I can't wholly agree with that. I do think that this patch has been bad for them, but I mean, I think some of their shot calling may be hurting them. I mean, Takui had 12 kills and they still lost. I mean, this guy, regardless of how you feel about this team, he deserves all the respect in the world. He really has been, I think, one of the brightest spots in the LCS, and they just don't give him, I think, enough respect, which is disappointing. But the thing is, for me, is Johnson has always been a role player type ADC. He can still carry games, but he's very much in the middle. And I've jokingly said that he's statistically a top 3 with Aframu, and statistically he is very good. And this was for my fantasy leagues, by the way. I didn't actually think talent wise he was there, but fantasy league wise, he's one of the best picks, actually, in case you're looking for your fantasy for next year. But
pro tip.
Yeah, he's wicked, man. He gets a lot of CS, a lot of kills, and not a lot of deaths. But he also doesn't take a lot of risks. And I think what I think is being exposed is I think it's Philip. And it's not that Philip's bad, but I think they were able to protect him a lot with the way that they were able to play. And now teams are just saying, we don't care, about that. We're just going to focus down, like you said, Takui, Jose Diodo. I still think Jose Diodo was playing at a very high level before. I think he's been the one to kind of fall off for me a little bit. His pathings have been weird. He's not dying as much as he was before, where it was it felt like I would watch games and he would just run in and die. I do think that, I will say this, I was really not on the Jose Diodo train at the beginning of the year. I think I've said it on this show, but I fully believe that he is a starting LCS level jungler, and I think he will continue to be that for the next few years. So I think he has established himself with that. I think that he and Takui are very good as well. I think Aframu is still very good. I think Johnson plays his role, and I do think that Philip, once he learns a little bit more about the game and the way that he needs to play, like I think Solo, it was really interesting what he said in the interview that he did with Mike about, Sol's problem is that there are certain timings and things that he just doesn't know yet because he hasn't played enough LCS games or, pro games, and that's just something that, regardless of how mechanically skilled you are, it just takes time, and that's what makes Solo so good is he's so cerebral. He knows those things.
Right.
Funny enough, I think if Solo was on this FlyQuest team, I actually think they could be contending for a pretty high spot because it's not that Philip isn't good, and I actually think Philip is probably technically better than Solo, but he also has to really learn to just, I think they're just going to stick him on, Ornn duty all weekend.
Right, and that's what's interesting is looking at what he played and what he's been playing a lot of carries, and I don't know if that's necessarily the meta or if this is just actually what he's best at or what the team thinks he's best at or whatever. But yeah, this weekend he played Gwen and Fiora. It's not like they're throwing him on Sejuani every game or nothing. They're giving him a chance to do something. And in some ways that's good because what does he get out of playing Sejuani 15 times, even if that's maybe what's best for the team, win-loss record. But it's also you're gonna end up with some 0-6 games.
Yeah, and I think that I personally believe this team is going to be fine because I do think they stick him on tank / supportive type duty, frontline duty for probably the rest of the split because they cannot, this team is way too good to not be in playoffs because there's a world where they lose all their games and they actually don't make playoffs. It's not very likely, but
I think they're gonna make it pretty comfortably. I think they're gonna be okay, and they're a team that should win a series and maybe give a scare to a team in the second round or something. But I think I'm kind of pretty far removed from FlyQuest outside chance at Worlds or something like that.
I'm not yet. I will say that I still think that there's a pretty good chance that they can make. I'm not going to say that it's my hot take, but I do believe that TL and CLG have shown volatility to the point where I believe that if FlyQuest kind of find that, again, Philip's just going to have to play, I think tanky stuff like weak side, no more resources his way, I do think this team can actually, they barely lost to CLG. They were kind of winning that game most of it, actually. So I still think that's the only thing that's
hard for me, though. The only thing that's hard for me is they'd have to jump C9, TL, and CLG, and it's I could see them maybe turning things around and being better in one of those, but the chances that they end up being better than all three of those teams, it's just really, really hard for me to see.
Well, we're going to have to see because the double elimination's interesting. They win one best of 5, especially in that upper bracket. They only have to win one more, I believe, and they're battling for a world spot. So I we'll have to see. Like you've said, we're just gonna have to see. I think we'll move on to Cloud9 because we're getting a little long in the tooth here, but that's just because of our earlier conversation. I still think was great. I hope if you've skipped to this point, for those of you who like to do that you go back and listen to that because
timestamped. That's on this video.
Will be timestamped. You're welcome. I know that it should be done. I understand it. It's just it's a lot more work for us. So I appreciate. I hope you guys like it. I hope it works well. Cloud9, what a disappointing weekend. Really and truly, I was all on the C9 are the third best team in the LCS, and I didn't think it was very close. But losses to CLG and to 100 Thieves make that not seem very true. Now, to be fair, it's a tough weekend. CLG are on a hot streak. They've done this once already, this split, where CLG are just almost unbeatable. And Cloud9 they're still figuring out parts. Jensen's been a huge, not disappointment necessarily, but just another kind of invisible jungler or a mid laner. I kind of think that the old style of mid laning is gone. I think a couple of years ago, definitely. If I had said this, I think people would have thought I was crazy. But I think Niski is a much better mid laner than Jensen, maybe even Bjergsen right now. As much as that's blasphemous to say.
Yeah, I think in some ways Niski was like a little bit ahead of his time with that play style, but
I
yeah, it's like
agree.
so much of what mid is now, and I think it's funny because like obviously myself at such a smaller extent, like I mostly have played mid lane in solo queue, and like even just seeing in solo queue how much mid lane has changed over the years. Like
Hmm.
mid lane was the premier position for so long. It
Yeah.
had all the agency, it had all the carry power, all the carry potential, and whether it's because they've nerfed mid or they've buffed other champions or positions or whatever, like, and Perks has said this before too. He's like, yeah, in season 12, like mid lane kind of sucks. Like
Yeah.
it's not the old times of like mid being the carry position. It's more in line with the other positions, if not weaker than like 80 carry and jungle and stuff like that. So having that Niski style where you're enabling carries from the other positions seems to be the way to go, or at least having the option to do both at like a decent level.
It's like an all
I think
around
is
type
definitely
position now.
interesting.
Sorry, I was agreeing with you. I didn't mean to cut you off. I was just
You're good.
going along with it. But like, it's an all around position now, and I actually think that's great. Like, you have to be able to carry and be supportive, and roam and all of these things. I actually think it means that while jungle I think is the most important position, I think having a mid laner that understands that, and you're seeing this. I mean, truly, you are seeing this in the LCS today, right? Like, let's quickly go through these mid laners, right? In these bottom-ish tier teams, for players that we thought were really good, and this will slightly contradict my argument for a Blaze Olive, but bear with me here, right? Immortals, Power of Evil used to be one of the best. He doesn't roam much. His problem has been the last 2 years that he doesn't roam enough. He's very much playing for lane. That style doesn't work anymore, right? Golden Guardians, the Blaze Olive has started to roam a lot more, and I actually think it's what's made him better. Maybe not as much statistically, but I actually think that he's been a huge caveat for why they've won their games. But regardless, Maple, right, is still that older style of lane. He's become kind of invisible. Um, Jensen, Bjergsen, right? But then the teams that are interesting, the ones that are kind of they have this mid laner, right? Takui, Palafox, randomly enough, Jojo Pion, and Abadage. Like,
Yeah, and I definitely do agree with what you're saying. But the only thing I'll say from that whole thing, and this is a fight I'm going to get in with a lot of people, I think, over the next couple of weeks, is that I still think right now Bjergsen has a case of potentially being the best mid laner in the LCS. Like,
sure,
I know people have been hard on him for like, oh, in this fight he like didn't do this, or I think he's a little bit too passive or whatever. But like his combination right now of he's having an amazing like laning season. TL's the
sure.
best early game team in the league. I do think if he gets on like an Ari or something, it seems like he's always going for like a top lane tower dive. I actually think he's getting on the map, and he has high DPS and good laning stats. Like, there's a lot of like Bjergsen flame going around right now. But it's funny because he had a quote of like, maybe Jensen and I used to be rivals or whatever, but now he's like, Jensen isn't even like the third or fourth best mid laner in the LCS right now. So like, Jensen
Sure.
and I aren't rivals, which is like such a cool line and such a funny quote. But also, yeah, like I don't think Bjergsen is in this like Jensen conversation. I'm not saying anything that you said, but I'm saying I've
Yeah,
had that conversation on Twitter and YouTube a couple times now of like, just because TL has been maybe disappointing, I don't think it's been Bjergsen, or maybe some of the criticism of Bjergsen in the past I don't think are as apt like right now necessarily. I think he's maybe adapted better than some of these other people.
now I think of all the people I said, I do think he's adapted the best. I still think there are a lot of games where TL don't do a whole lot and rely on the late game.
Yeah, and I think he could be better.
Really
Like, even
comes
though he's been
online.
good, he probably could do more
Yeah,
with what he's
well,
doing.
and he really comes online late, and like he used to roam a lot, and like he's able to adapt well. But I'm talking about like his best, when he is truly at his best, is when there are control mages in the meta and he can do the lane, right? Like,
Yeah.
where he can just take over the game, right? And you're right. I shouldn't maybe put him into this same list that I was, but my point I think still remains that the teams that are finding success, the ones that are doing well, are the ones that are having these mid laners kind of
Yeah.
run around and do their thing. And I think that's why we're seeing Cloud9 struggle. It's not that Jensen's bad, but he's not good either. And I think that there is a fine line between that right now. And so at least in this current meta, and I do agree with you. I didn't play mid much until recently. Or I used to do just Syndra mid basically, but I believe that we are definitely seeing a very different mid lane, and I almost wonder if that's probably been noticed by Riot. And I wonder if we're going to see battle mages and stuff coming back, like maybe next year. But
yeah, maybe, but to me it seems like they've pretty actively made the switch, because I think the meta in which the battle mages are good is like pretty unfun overall, because a lot of these champions have yeah, not even that, but even like Orianna, Syndra, like when you get to the point that they're good in like solo queue or whatever, they're so disgustingly broken in pro play. Because like even right now, Syndra's like a 45% win rate in solo queue, and you see like Bjergsen picked her like a couple weeks ago in LCS. Like these champions, they have good wave clear, they can play safe, especially when you have like TP and defensive runes and all this stuff, and a jungler covering you. And then they get to the late game, they have unreal damage from off the screen. They have still the crazy wave clear. They have, talk about Syndra, Orianna. They have like the zone control and everything. It's like they are kind of like jacks of all trades, and that's why all these mid laners came up as the control mage players, because they're so good and competitive. It's like I think Riot has kind of actively gone away from that, because I think the game needed that in some ways. Like the game was so mid lane dependent, because already mid lane is the center of the map, can go everywhere, can do all these things. If they're also the carry role that can also like go other places, like that was, I think, too much.
Well, and we'll see. I mean, I'm going to be intrigued, because they always like to make a big change during the preseason. And I do wonder if mages are going to get something, because it has been complained about by a lot of mid laners, and so. Yeah, I do agree with you. I think this style is way more fun. I think this style is way more fun
for everyone. Like for mid laners, yes, obviously Perks would love to be the whole game and orchestrate everything. But like, it makes 80 carry. Okay, if you're level 4 and a level 6 mid laner can just show up and wipe you out and then also be better than you in the late game, that sucks.
The game. Surprisingly, the way I'm watching it right now, it actually feels pretty balanced. There's not like super OP picks that I'm like entirely where like I know everybody's like Poppy's OP, but I'm like I watch these games, I'm like you just freaking I don't even think Zeri. I think Zeri's very punishable. I don't know why people don't punish her in the bot lane like early game before level 8.
No, I just meant there was a Reddit thread about Zeri this weekend. So I just meant like people complaining about OP
I did see that. I was like, what? She's unbalanceable. I'm like, dude. Just have your jungler come down, put her behind, and she really is, until like 22 minutes, she's pretty useless. You can.
Yeah, I think
the one not great.
Right. My one problem with Zeri is the laser doing 1k HP. I think is really stupid.
That hits like a truck.
But no, I think the game's in a good spot, solo queue and pro play wise. Like I think the changes they've made, I think the durability update was really cool. And actually, I think this most recent patch, kind of flying under the radar, the fact that they nerfed all the resolve runes. We saw a lot of squishy champions going resolve tree secondary and having unkillable laning phases and stuff, and now that they took away some of that, we saw games be a little bit more explosive this weekend, because you can't just stay in lane forever and you don't have 100% HP all the time, and like winning a trade or trading up actually matters. I think they're doing cool things overall, even if it's like minor stuff.
That, and I think having to fight over dragons and having to fight over even second Rift Herald, I think we're going to see a lot more of that coming up. And I think a team that actually, to segue this, that used that pretty well this weekend was Team Liquid. I mean, they did that, but I think they realized that playing towards the top of the map was going to work better for them, and this patch kind of helped that. Again, getting the extra local gold and stuff from Rift Herald. Dude, Whippo was an animal. I mean, I don't know how if he doesn't win Player of the Week, because I don't think they announced that until the following week, but...
No, he did. He
did win it?
They put it out yesterday.
Okay. Yeah, I couldn't remember when they did it, but I mean... He was a man possessed, and I love this. I think, listen, Hans Sama's just not doing it. They've been trying, it's not working, and then you go out, you play through Bwipo twice, and he's a little bit more volatile, but dude, like, once they started actually playing in that FlyQuest game, once they kind of, I think, got that ball rolling, realizing they didn't have to just play to the late game, they carried that right over into their next game against Evil Geniuses, and I think they kind of showed us the team that we thought that they could be and should be. I
Right. For the first time all year.
For the first time. Yeah, literally all year. Like,
Yeah.
they were, even during spring split, it was just sit back.
Yeah, they had a good record. They had a good record, but you weren't like wowed watching them play.
Yeah,
and this weekend I was wowed.
Yeah, me too. Like, and yes, again, Whippo will probably lose them a game or two during playoffs for sure.
100%.
Hopefully, it's not going to be a critical one, but they're at least going to be interesting. They like, for the first time, I think, yeah, all year I can say this team's going to be interesting. I am now intrigued to watch their games. I went back and actually watched the second game because I was just like, wow, look at this. Like, this team's good. They're not just, they're not like, and it's so unfair because everybody's already talking about, well, Santorin's going to get replaced by Spica. And I'm like, dude, that doesn't solve the core issue of this team. The core issue of this team is people like Core JJ, Bjergsen to a certain degree, Santorin and Hansama, not as much Whippo, but he was, kind of, I think, trying to fit in.
Yeah, definitely. And yeah, you're in a new environment, new place. You're not going to be stepping on people's toes.
Exactly. And, like, he comes out at the beginning of the year, well, we felt like we need to play through bot lane more. And I'm like, dude, you guys barely played through you. You guys just didn't do anything. You just played for lane and then won games. Like,
yeah, it was like, it wasn't a team playing. It was just a bunch of people doing their own thing.
And I think we've seen, like, Fnatic hasn't recovered from it. They still are not doing well enough to do it. TL have gotten lucky. The LCS is pretty forgivable for players of their skill level right now.
Right.
And they're on a streak right now, and I mean, I don't have them as, the second best team in my power rankings, but I did put them third. And I'm, for the first time all year, comfortable with that. Like, even when I put them first at the beginning of this split, I was like, dude, I don't really know that they're the best
first
team.
By default,
but yeah,
or whatever.
It's kind of by default, and I figured Evil Geniuses would take some time to roll, to get started again. I'm happy about this team. This is the perfect time for them because I think they're going to go into what is a relatively easy weekend. They'll finish with 100 Thieves, but 100 Thieves loses one game. Evil Geniuses loses one game. Like, maybe TL can make a run for top 2. They're probably not going to, but I mean, I guess they could. I don't know. They're kind of set in that 3rd, 4th spot right now, but I still want to see them just go after it this weekend and try to finish, on a really strong note.
Yeah, and this weekend was weird for me on 2 points, I guess, because going into this weekend, I was really low on TL, really high on C9, and I didn't think that 2 games could possibly have made me flip so much. Like, I thought C9 was so disgusting to watch this weekend. You're talking about Jensen. I also had big problems with Blabber. Like, I thought Blabber was just not good. Not good at all. And then Team Liquid, just to flip it on their head. And I actually love that they played around topside. I don't know. I don't even know if it was by design because like Whippo after his game was like, oh yeah, we just kind of, as we were playing, we just saw like, hey, the wave set up. We can go make a play top lane and all this stuff. But I love them playing around top lane because I think Whippo is amazing and can do crazy things. You're going to have games like this, but also taking some pressure off Hansama. If he's not performing, let him get a game like he had where he gets to farm up and not die and win and, just get through a game and get some confidence back so maybe he can be great eventually. But if he's not great right now, don't force it. Make him, like, you're putting a spotlight on a guy who doesn't want a spotlight on him right now.
I couldn't agree more.
Let him be quiet for a couple weeks.
I couldn't agree more. And if we really didn't have to, we may want to eventually consider this to end up making this 2 episodes because I still think there's a lot to go through. And maybe we'll look at that for next year. Let us know in the comments what you guys think of that. We got to move on, unfortunately. I think your point with Hansama, though, is perfect. I really do because I was feeling the exact same way. Give him a break, finally. Like, he doesn't have to be the one to carry them. CLG, dude. 5-game win streak. You kind of forget they were 5-5 at one point. They have now won against, during this time period, they have beaten C9, FlyQuest, Dig Golden Guardians, whatever, and Team Liquid.
Yeah.
3 good teams. And they beat Evil Geniuses earlier in the year. I don't remember if they had beaten 100 Thieves earlier in the year. I don't think so. No, they did not. But, regardless, they'll get their chance at them again. If CLG were to beat 100 Thieves, I believe they would be the only team in the LCS to have beaten all of the top 5 teams. which is kind of crazy when you think about it. This team, they're doing, like you said, what we thought FlyQuest would be doing. They're playing better than the sum of their parts. I mean, freaking Luger is playing Seraphine, and they're winning games right now. I think Poom has been an unsung hero for this team. He has just constantly been wherever he's needed to be. I'm probably going to be doing a piece later this week on the MVPs of each team. I think Palafox is probably the MVP of this team right now. I mean, he has been outstanding. Yeah, I think so. And I was ready to give up on him. I was like, he was such a high talented guy. He just never panned out. Now I'm like, dude, what do you change on this CLG team? Honestly, funny enough, the one thing I might change is Dokla in the top lane this offseason.
Yeah, for sure.
This team's good.
I think you could go out. You could now all of a sudden you could get aggressive this offseason and it wouldn't be ridiculous. And it's crazy because if in the preseason, if I told you, hey, 15 games in, CLG's 10-5, you would have been like, or I at least would have been like, okay, so Luger is the MVP of the LCS, or what the heck's going on? What happened? And the fact that he's largely been disappointing, I guess. I mean, he hasn't been bad, but worse than I would have expected. And this team's still where they are is kind of crazy, kind of surprising for sure.
Yeah, I agree. And for my hot take, this one's going to be a bit of one. But I believe that Contracts needs to be all pro. I think at least third for this season. It's crazy to me that I'm saying that. I was so critical of him, but he's consistently having good games. His KDA is pretty strong. He's doing it on multiple champions, and he's allowing all of his lanes to play well through just about any lane. Or in any way they want to. So, and I also think, by the way, ThinkCard is a genius. He is consistently on teams that do well. He was the mastermind, I believe, behind the Clutch Gaming team that did really well. Yeah. He helped Golden Guardians for a while. I think he may have been with FlyQuest at one point too, but feels like wherever he goes, he does really well. I wouldn't be surprised to see TSM try to go get him or somebody else on that staff, to be honest with you, because I think they can pay them a lot more. But aside from that, this CLG team is really good, and my hot take is that I think Contracts needs to be an all-pro. And I'm probably going to vote for him myself to be there when I just submitted my letting them know that I'd be interested for all pro voting and stuff, and I think so I'm gonna put him there.
You have a little bit of a vested interest in this hot take. You're
and if I don't put it
a little bit.
Yeah, if you end up looking at the votes and you don't see, my vote there, the one thing that TGH does that I don't think everybody else does is while the vote may be submitted under my name or somebody else's in TGH's, we take a group wide vote together. Cool. And then we submit it. So if you ever see ones that are a little weird, then it means the brain trust that TGH is doing it. I always put out my own ones too, just in case if people are wondering.
Yeah. No, I think that's cool. My hot take was actually going to be CLG related as well. I'm going a little bit different. This is I don't know. I still haven't even found a format that I consistently like for the hot takes. Mine are always just the most abstract or whatever. But mine is that I think that don't think I would have ever said this, but I think CLG has a chance, and the hot take is going to be that they're going to become a top LCS organization again. And
wow.
And I mean that in the sense of even starting to potentially build up a fan base and stuff again, maybe reclaim some of their old glory, which we don't see a lot of in the LCS. We've seen Immortals rise and fall and not be able to find footing again. Dignitas rise, fall, and not be able to find their footing again. But CLG, they have a history. They have maybe a nostalgia factor for some of the old CLG fans and stuff potentially. But mostly this is just because how impressed I have been with the CLG management, staff, everyone involved. I keep saying this. The change that they have had from last year to this year, so drastic. We don't see stuff like this in the LCS almost ever. The fact this team's 10-5 right now after they were disgustingly horrible last year, I called so many people called them the joke of the LCS or whatever. I'm all of a sudden incredibly interested to see what this management, coaching staff, everyone's going to do for the next like 2 or 3 years. And if they keep doing stuff like this team's going to be good for a while. And if you're good, you're going to get fans. You're going to get some bandwagoners. They're probably going to make a run to Worlds at some point in the near future. The one caveat to this is like, are they going to get enough backing to, how much money are they going to have access to? Are they going to be able to go make an aggressive move or two this offseason? Are they not going to have any support or anything like that? Is this going to fizzle out? But like, if they have any kind of backing whatsoever and this team can actually do something, I think they have a chance to become an interesting organization all of a sudden once again, especially when you look at some other teams, like TSM, their futures maybe a little bit shakier and stuff. Like there might be a spot in the upper echelon up for grabs or something like that. And I think CLG has a chance to do it.
That to me is an interesting one. I wrote an article earlier this year during the offseason because I was kind of curious to see all-time win percentages. Okay. And a lot of people do hang on those days where they did win some championships, right? And I think that is really interesting. But of the 13 teams that have ever played in the LCS, CLG have the worst winning percentage at 35%.
Crazy.
Immortals are only at 37. Now, obviously, this split is going to change at least a little bit. Yeah. Obviously, of the 10 teams right now, they are the bottom teams. Of the original teams, like the original 7 that went into the LCS. By the way, this is all since the LCS franchised. So there is a caveat there. But they are... Give me a second here. Okay. Since 2018, and before this split, they were 59 and 112. In 171 games played, they were averaging 6.5 wins and 12.4 losses. Their best split ever was 2019, where they went 12-6, an opportunity that they have to best this split, by the way, and I think they have a good chance of doing it. They still have one of the worst splits ever at 3-15. I love that hot take because I actually think you're right. They finally, whoever was there for the longest time just clearly didn't give a shit about this team. Right. Now they seemingly do. And again, I think, and I even really questioned their decisions to bring up Dokla to be this team. I think they're good at recognizing talent and how to bring out the best in their players. The only thing that worries me is I wonder how much higher does this team go? How much higher do these players individually go? Are we already seeing the best CLG that we can? Because again, you got to remember they went 3-0 to start, and then they went 2-5. I'm intrigued. I love that take. I think it is super spicy because a 5-game win streak does a lot to change minds. Can you imagine if it ends up being an 8-game win streak and they finish 13-5? Dude, they're going to set the world on fire, and that means, truly in my mind, if they can do that, I think they're a title contender. I don't know that they win it all, but I think they can contend with it.
They're at least in the conversation.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then I just think it all of a sudden it opens up their offseason so much. Like you said, it's hard of who do you replace, who do you change, what do you even do? They're going to have some tough decisions to make. And if they're willing to make some tough decisions and get aggressive and make an upgrade or two, yeah, I don't think this team is a finished product. I don't think these 5 players are winning an LCS title 2 years from now or something like that. But could 3 of these players or 2 of these players be on a team that goes to Worlds? I could see that.
I could too. And again, I think we could talk about this team forever, but we do have 2 more teams left. Evil Geniuses, for the first time ever, are not going to be the last thing we talk about. And, unless we flip the order, which we've done a couple times. A big loss to Team Liquid this weekend. They're looking a little more mortal, but I'm kind of okay with that because I still think they're by far and away the best team in the LCS. And again, I know 100 Thieves are on a 7-game win streak. They beat Evil Geniuses. I just still think Evil Geniuses are a better team overall. That is probably dealing with a bit of burnout finally. And even still, they're slapping most teams. Everybody's like, oh, they look vulnerable. They still played that 100 Thieves game really close. Yeah, they did get their asses kicked by TL, but I don't think that's a norm for them. I still would take them maybe at least 8 times out of 10 against almost every one of these teams, and I still think they are by far my favorite for another title, for back-to-back titles.
Yeah, I think, I guess, if you want to be overly critical, one question you can bring up is like, hey, did this team get like too cocky? Were they too full of themselves too quickly? Something like that. Because I think that's definitely possible. They were talking about how it's hard to practice because they're so much better than everybody else and stuff like that. And that stuff's funny to hear, but it's not ideal. But I think honestly, what's most concerning for me right now, like I still think EG's fine. I think they're gonna be okay. Maybe they win the title, maybe they don't. Honestly, I don't really care that much who wins the title anyway. Like for me, it's all about Worlds. Are you going to go to Worlds? Are you going to do well at Worlds? And like EG's going to Worlds. So like, would it be great if they won another title? Yeah, but they've already got their title now. Like, everyone talks about how the first one's the best one, all that stuff. What's the most concerning for me is that Impact has been pretty out of form recently. Like, last week or the week before, whatever, we were like, oh, Impact kind of had a bad week. Like, he'll probably be fine. And it's like, okay, now Impact had another not so good week. Is he out of form? Is he going to turn around? Is he going to level up in the playoffs? I think so, and I hope so, but like kind of uncharacteristically bad games from Impact recently.
Yeah, but I will say, I think teams are just kind of realizing that the only way to beat Evil Geniuses is to pick on one lane. It's hard to pick on mid lane. It's really, really hard to pick on bot lane. I think they're just realizing that's the one weakness, and I don't think that it's Impact that's bad necessarily. I just think top lane's the easiest place. I mean, think about how many games they've won where he's like 0-6, and then he comes back and he's like 5-6 or something like that, and looks like he has a respectable scorer line.
Yeah, and what's annoying about EG too is like, TL found this out in the playoffs, is like even when you do punish Danny or put him behind or whatever, like they just give him so many resources that he still scales up. It doesn't matter. Like Inspired will literally give Danny his entire jungle. Like, yeah, even if you do successfully kill Danny like 2 or 3 times, it literally doesn't even matter. So not only is it hard to punish them, it's like sometimes you can't even punish them, even if you do it well.
Yeah, and I think like it takes weird picks like Set to kind of like put them in the ground. Like I'm not going to call what Bwippo did as cheese, because I don't believe that. I actually think it was really intelligent. I do think we will see Set possibly even around the world as a counter to Gwen, because Gwen is super strong still. Like, I know Impact may not make it seem that way because he's had a lot of just okay Gwen games, but that's not like his fault. I really don't believe it's so hard for him when he's just getting dove so many times that it's, what is he really supposed to do when he's got 3 people in his lane constantly? Teams have to find a way to beat Evil Geniuses right now, and that's their one chance, is that if their top laner or jungler or mid get fed because they kill Impact a few times, I think that's their one way where they can maybe try to win right now. And again, maybe I'm just like so on the EG hype train that I'm being blinded by some of this other stuff, and it's fairly possible. I really think we're
going to find out soon. We
will. They will. I would assume they're going to have a bye week. And we'll get to see if they can, do something with that bye week. I actually hope they kind of take the week off and then go into the games. But I still really like this team. I'm not as worried as you are about Impact, but I totally see your point. Like, they're going to have to find a way to not make this a weakness. And that may mean a little less resources for Danny or a little less resources for JoJo. Like, I think if I'm Evil Geniuses, I actually do think you take a little bit of resources away from Danny just to at least get Impact to a point, because he can just straight up carry a series even for them. They got to get his confidence rolling as they head into playoffs. Luckily, I think
and he can straight up lose you games if he is getting put in these positions. If you're 0-6, like, you're not gonna have an amazing win. Even if you're Impact and you're one of the best players in the LCS at being 0-6, you don't want to be 0-6.
Well, luckily EG have the easiest weekend, I think, of all the teams. They play Golden Guardians, Dignitas, and then a struggling Cloud9 team. So, of the top teams, I'm pretty sure, I think Team Liquid might play a similar schedule, but it's a pretty easy week for them. I think it's a nice way for them to kind of ramp up for playoffs.
Yeah.
Last team, and the hottest team potentially in the West, I want to say, is
definitely. Yeah.
This team looks so damn good right now. And Abadage, I didn't get to watch their game against who was this? Against C9. That Ari was the best. I will straight up say that was the best Ari gameplay I have seen out of a Western player this year. He was unbelievable. You know, and it's like it's such a far cry from the game that they barely beat TSM at the beginning of the split. Like his Ari has leveled up immensely. The comfort level on this champion is incredible, and this team is horrifying to play against right now. I mean, he was the star of the game, and FBI went 12-0-8. Oh my god! Like everybody's like, well, he's like not that great, like whatever. I don't care if the support is that great when you have Someday who's playing well again. Closer is playing at the top of his game, proving everybody that he can do more than just play Viego, by the way. Abadage is absolutely proving me and every other person that put him down wrong. And FBI is still one of the most underrated players in the league. This team is insane, and they are catching fire at the perfect time. I'm excited. I'm so pumped because yet again, I think we have 5, potentially 6 teams that are good enough to play well at Worlds. I don't care what you say about Cloud9. They will play well if they go to Worlds. I promise you. They pretty much always do.
Especially with the scrims and everything you get beforehand and stuff. You level up just by being at the event, for sure.
Exactly. And it's like, people forget, like, we might actually have a decent chance just because we don't have to freaking travel. All of our players can basically live at home. You know, until game days. So it's just like...
Yeah, we'll see how much of a difference that makes. It could be really big. Maybe. Yeah. I hope it's a really big deal.
I hope so, too. So I'm really... Like you said, I'm really excited for this playoffs. I think this team just kind of is the icing on the cake for us, man. I love this team right now. They're very fun to watch.
Yeah, it's crazy because I've been so low on them the whole season. And I really still do think rightfully so. Like, I've gotten a lot of flack for that the whole year. But, like... Right now, they do look different. And that's what's frustrating to me about this team is they're so hot and cold. It's so interesting how streaky they all are. They have some between the 4 players you mentioned. You know, someday Closer, Abadage, and FBI, guys who can be the best and pedestrian at their position. You know, from different points in the season. It's like they're not even like pedestrian, but like 5th best at their position, which like for the top teams I would consider like largely invisible, and that also speaks to the level of the other players in the LCS. I think like top 5 used to be an insult, and like at this point I don't think top 5 is like an insult, like being 5th. But right now, yeah, they're all looking so good, and FBI, yeah, just an insane weekend from FBI. Like if Whippo didn't do what he did, FBI was probably going to be player of the week. Abadage looking very, very good, and their play was crazy, and yeah, Cloud9. Like, however bad Cloud9 looked, like, 100 Thieves took that momentum. But what I liked the most from them the whole weekend was FBI after the Cloud9 series on the mic, where he said, he like said in his interview, he said, we realized that we were playing like pussies, or, something to that extent. Which was funny for him to say on stage, obviously. But that's what he said. And that it would be, like, if I could pick one thing for a 100 Thieves player to say, like that's exactly what I'd want to hear, because that's been my criticism of them. It's like, yes, you were winning LCS games, but you were playing such a disgusting style, and if they are actively trying to get away from that style, which obviously they like to late game team fight, that's what they're good at, whatever, that doesn't mean you have to do nothing in the early game. So if they want to get aggressive and want to play a little bit more fast and interesting, the late game's still going to happen. The late game doesn't disappear just because you play faster at the beginning. I think that's great for them. And they're talented enough to do it. It's not like they need to sacrifice the early game. They can get stuff done. So that made me more excited than even the games for 100 Thieves.
Well, and especially with the fact that you have a team that's talented enough to allow for you to stall out the mid game long enough if you do make a lot of mistakes in the early game, right?
Right. And if you're good at team fighting, you can make up a gold deficit potentially even.
Absolutely. And yeah, this team has a lot of potential, and I do like that they want to be more aggressive. I think that's been the problem with the LCS for the longest time, and I think that's what Evil Geniuses have shown everybody else is it's like constant aggression, constantly making the other team have to make decisions is what's going to win you games. Like, you can maybe be a little less talented than the other team, but if you come out and you're like, hey, we're going to make you have to fight over everything. Oh, and by the way, we're going to probably beat you most of the time in those fights if you're not absolutely ready on your game at that time.
Yeah, because this is what we do every day.
And it's like, again, I think everybody's getting really hyped for the LCS. I know a lot of people were calling us out on the last episode on your channel for saying this, but the LCS is leveling up for sure. There are good teams across the LCS right now. Even even a FlyQuest team, if that team gets hot, they could easily go to Worlds and I would be okay with it. I don't think that they would do enormously well, but I bet you they would at least have a chance of making it out, a better chance than a lot of other teams that we have sent to Worlds in the past. So I am of the opinion
the only way stuff like that is going to stop is if we have to get multiple teams out of groups, and we have to have somebody at least be competitive in quarterfinals. But like if we say this year we get 2 teams out of groups and even one team that's competitive in quarters, or God forbid a team get to semifinals, like that stuff will start to quiet down. But even though we're saying, oh, we're leveling up, and we have. Still, you look back to last year, we had one team get out of groups. They lost 3-0 in quarters. So it's like those people still have a ton of ammo, Like we can know we're leveling up, and we can say Worlds is a small sample size. It's like that's 1 best of 5, whatever, anything can happen. It's like you have to silence that if you have to like outprove it, So
yeah,
I hope we do.
You're not wrong. I guess for me it was just like being better than EU last year was such a huge step forward. And I'll say this much. I think whatever group of 3 teams that we send this year will be better than last year's 3 teams. And I'm pretty confident in saying that.
Right. And then it just, did everyone else level up? Did they not? That'll be interesting to see as well.
Yeah, because I'll tell you this much. While everything may look bad over at EU, those teams are actually pretty solid, and that's why they're all beating each other. It's because... Yeah. Even teams like Astralis have figured out a play style to where they're actually not a bad team. Like Dayor is super underrated, and Kabe's playing like Splice Kabe. Like their Western League of Legends looks better, and I honestly still believe this from our previous conversation. Again, if you're skipping to this point, go back and listen to the first 20 minutes because I really do believe more games would make this region level up like that. And I believe
I think it'd be good
because it's the whole iron sharpens iron thing, right? I think the better teams you have and the more time that they're playing against each other, the better it's going to be. And it seems like all these LCS teams are constantly trying to be. The only team that I think is actively not trying to get better is Dignitas.
Yeah, they're done. They're ready for next year or for
not
no
year. All right. Well, with that, long episode for sure. I think very. Lots of good, discussion. We will cut it up for you guys, which means that I will have to go back and re-listen to this whole thing again for you guys.
Click through it. You get some general.
Yeah, I'll get some general ideas of where it ends. But no, I do appreciate those suggestions, and please keep them rolling in. Like I know I'm being facetious about you guys suggesting it. We have noticed. We just haven't. We've both been pretty busy. Jerm's just moved to a new job. I'm got new people coming into Game House, so I've been training them and stuff.
We're learning as we go too. This is a new thing, we're still, it's crazy, but yeah, this summer split's almost over, but we're still only month, 2 months, whatever into this. So
yeah, and it's been fun, and we really enjoyed it. And the more that you guys interact, the more you guys let us know what you hate and love about it, the better we can make this show. So we really do appreciate all of you who are out there watching. I think a pretty big size amount of people that Jerm and I were expecting for this show. So really appreciate all of you who are watching, and we hope that you'll continue as we get into playoffs and into Worlds, because we're still going to have plenty of hot takes to give out there, and we'll continue to embarrass ourselves for your entertainment. For Jerm, I'm Rob. We'll see you all next week.
Peace.